All right, so I hope you like this clip from The Karate Kid, directed by John D. Avildsen from 1984. That was the year I was born, by the way, in case anyone cares. I don't know if that makes you feel really young or old, makes me feel old. But yeah, so love this movie. It reminds me a lot of my childhood, watched it a million times growing up. Okay, so these are the questions we're going to be asking. We're really going to be exploring both characters, but really in this one more Mr. Miyagi than Daniel's son or Daniel LaRusso. All right. So, what did you notice about the relationship? How would you describe Miyagi's character? What archetype do you think Mr. Miyagi might be? And if you don't know the word archetype yet, don't worry about it. We'll get there. I promise. Okay, so things you might have noticed. I noticed that they sort of have like a mentor-mentee relationship or a teacher-sensei slash student relationship, right? Um, we see Mr. Miyagi give him advice, but we also know, if you've seen the Karate Kid at all or know anything about it, we know that Mr. Miyagi is his teacher. He's the guy that teaches him karate. He also teaches him about life, and we do sense that here a little bit. He does give him some advice, and they reference the fact that they've been training for a long time for the upcoming tournament. I think you can also tell that they're very close and friendly. They might even have sort of a father-son kind of relationship or a grandfather-grandson kind of relationship. If you haven't seen the movie, Danny LaRusso's character does not have a dad. And so he does kind of play that role as well. But they're definitely close. You know, they hug. You can tell that there's a real kindness, friendship, and maybe kind of there's some love there, mutual respect for each other as well, right? All right. Now, specifically, Mr. Miyagi's character. What did you notice about him? I noticed he's kind and generous. Like the fact that he gives Daniel a car for his birthday, really nice. I know that some people do get cars for their birthday, like when they're old enough to drive, or they turn 18, or they're going away from college. But that's still like a really nice gift, right? Really expensive gift that a lot of people can't afford or do, and this isn't even his son, right? This is his student. So to do that for him shows he's incredibly kind and generous. I think we'd also tell he's patient. He's got sort of a slowness to his vibe, right? He's chill. He's very calm, and so we see that as well in this clip, just kind of his overall personality or demeanor. And I think we also said he's wise, right? This is kind of the big quote he drops on Daniel LaRusso at the end. So it's his 18th birthday. He's about to meet up his girlfriend. That's not going too great. Kind of had a bit of a argument with her, because his mind's on the tournament and his mind's on getting bullied at school and all these other things. And he tells him, it's the balance is not just about karate; it's about all of your life. And he tells him, go out, have fun, find your balance, right? Don't worry about karate today. So he's also very wise, even though his one of his main jobs in this movie is to teach him karate. It's more than that, and he wants Danny to see that and realize life is more than karate. So he's wise as well, right? Okay, so what kind of archetype do you think Mr. Miyagi might be? If you don't know that word, we're going to talk a little bit about archetypes, just so you kind of have some context before we talk about which one he might be. So an archetype is a person or a character that is familiar to people. All right. So if you saw Mr. Miyagi and you're like, he kind of reminds me of a character like Professor Dumbledore in Harry Potter or Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, or maybe even Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, or any of these other kind of older, wiser characters, you're not crazy. It's because he's an archetype. This is a kind of character we see over and over again in stories. And writers and directors in film use these in order to make sure that they're familiar right away for their audience. It's like a shortcut. Like if you already recognize a character, they can kind of immediately get into the story that they want to tell. And also lets us explore timeless ideas or themes, right? The idea of like learning for growth, or the idea of what is a hero, or true love, or all these other things, right? It allows us to explore these ideas and things that happen in our lives that happen to everyone all over the world, all over throughout time. So that's what an archetype is. It's just a character, situation, or an event that is very familiar to you and very familiar to people all over the place, no matter where they live and no matter what time period they grew up in, because they come in all stories, because they're representative of real people that we meet in our lives all the time. Okay, so some character archetypes, some characters stick to that archetype throughout the story. That means they just kind of fit that definition of the specific kind of character. Mr. Miyagi, kind of that older, wiser guy who's going to keep his cool kind of character, right? Some characters do that. They don't change at all. Some characters are a blend of archetypes. There's more than one that they kind of fit. And some characters start as archetypes and they grow. So like sometimes this particular like tough hero or wise sage starts off that way, and then they grow over the course of the story. And that's what makes them interesting and unique and believable and complex. Okay. So I would say that Mr. Miyagi probably most fits the definition of the sage. And the sage is often a wiser, or is a wise and often older figure. Check, check, right? He's clearly wise, drops some knowledge on Daniel's son. He's clearly older than Daniel's son. He doesn't have to be like super old, but in this case, he's definitely older than Daniel's son. The strengths are wisdom, experience, and insight. Like, because he's older and he's learned a lot of things in life, he can give this wisdom to Daniel's son to make him a better person, to help him grow and maybe not make some of the mistakes he did. So those are the strengths. The weaknesses of the sage are that they are sometimes too cautious and they're hesitant to join the fight. And if you've seen Karate Kid, one of the reasons why Daniel's son is trained to fight is because Mr. Miyagi sees him getting beat up and he helps him out. And then he goes to the studio where the kids are beating him up and says, "Hey, let's have some peace." No, okay, then I'm going to enter Daniel into this tournament and kind of train him up, right? So, all characters kind of have strengths and weaknesses, and these are the sort of archetypal characteristics of Mr. Miyagi. And if you've seen the whole movie, he kind of fits that pretty good. He doesn't break too far from those characteristics. So that's what makes him a great example of the archetype of the sage. And we'll talk more about different kinds of characters later, but there are lots of archetypes out there. Most people say there's like between 10, 12, maybe 15 famous ones. And it's okay if you don't know them all, but once you read about them and you see a few examples, you'd probably be like, yeah, I've seen that character in a different movie, or yeah, that's exactly, yeah, of course he's the hero or the lover, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things we'll be exploring in this unit are the different kind of archetypes and the role they play in the stories that we read and love, in the movies that we read and love. And we'll also be talking about complex characters coming up.